Because I could never quite get straight whether you and Dave were Marxist Leninists or Leninist Trotskyites or Trotskyist Marxists.
It was complicated. Yeah, yeah. We were Marxists. When I met David, he was an anarchist, and I was a social democrat. I became a Trotskyist. I converted him, and that's what we stayed for a long time. I ain't no more. But there was, as you all know, a historic relationship between the labor movement, the left-wing movement, and folk music. So some folk, and the village was very small at that time. It was teeny. There were maybe 500 people in it. I don't mean who lived there. I mean, you know, it was like the socialists, the communists, the jazz people, the folk people, the theater people, the poetry people, the artists. There were maybe 1,000 of them. The Beats were there. And people kind of knew of or knew one another. I'm not exactly sure how we all met, but it happened. And I ran into folk singers at meetings of the Young Socialist League, which was a Marxist Trotskyist sect, and yes, they were sectarian as hell. And I kind of floated into the folk music world. And of course, my sister was at Brandeis. She was not a socialist, but Brandeis was in its, I think it's like its third or fourth year then. And she came home with Woody Guthrie's albums and Pete Seeger albums, and I played them and I loved them. And I met a couple of folk singers at these meetings. I started to go to Washington Square, and I hung out there a lot. And I started to spend a lot of time in the folk music world.
Okay, and this Dave you're mentioning, Dave who?
I was at one of the groups was were the science fiction fans who put out mimeographed publications about science fiction.
My people.
Yes, mine too.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, at that time. Yeah, and I was at a party of science fiction people uptown in Manhattan. You're not all from New York City, so you don't know Riverside Drive. This street near the river in Manhattan with rooms. I mean, there were apartments with living rooms the size of this room. They were enormous. They were gorgeous. They obviously belonged to wealthy people at one time. They were like 8 and 10 room apartments. The ceilings were sky high. The rooms were great. I remember all the kitchens, which were like the size of my parents' living room at home. And I was sitting there. I, at that time, was, I think, 17. And I was a sophomore in college, at Brooklyn College. And I was sitting there with some guy who was holding my hand, and he wanted me to go in the bedroom with him. 17 then, a lot of you would know this, was a lot younger than 17 now. But I knew that this guy didn't want to take me into the bedroom for sex. And it turned out, he told me he wanted me to go in and smoke marijuana with him. And at that time, to me, marijuana was that strange, evil stuff that you read about in books, and that grew in the fields across from my high school. And the cops came every year and burned it down. And I was appalled. And after a little while, a tall, very skinny, yes, very skinny young man came up and rescued me and said, "Go away, Shel, leave her alone." And Dave Van Ronk and I spent the rest of the evening talking. And I don't remember whether he took me, no, he didn't take me home that night. We just spent the rest of the evening talking. Years later, he told me he was so stoned that night. But who knew? I didn't know.
You still didn't tell us Dave who.
So it's Dave Van Ronk, and I'm going to do a caveat to that, which is that I have vivid memories. When I would finish playing in the Village, my mother, who would always come to my shows, would sit in the bitter end at the bar with Dave and you. You would all get your drinks, you would sit at a table, and they would be singing the Internationale, the Communist Workers' song. And I would stand there begging them to stop. And I would keep putting things on the jukebox, and Dave would keep going and unplugging the jukebox. And I would again beg them to stop, and they would continue singing, and Dave would shout at me that, all right, if I wasn't a socialist now, I would be a socialist one day when they came for me. And that's my memory of meeting you and Dave for the second time.
Wow. Gee. The bitter end, the International. Yep.
Okay, I want to fast forward a little bit here. And you ended up being with Dave for quite a while.
Yep.
And then you also ended up being his manager.
I became his
So
manager.
describe-
He got mad as a manager. He had a manager, which was very unusual for a young folk singer. And he got mad at his manager because he was working a club in Philadelphia, which obviously didn't have any money, and he was going to get stiffed. And we called his manager, who said, work out the gig, which is what you do. I mean, this is a perfectly intelligent thing to do. Except we knew that he could work out, and I don't know if you know the expression, it's an old expression, sue a beggar and you get lice. And that's what was going to happen. I mean, so he got mad, and he worked out the gig, but he fired the manager, and he said to be my manager. By then, I was in graduate school. There was no American Studies program in New York, so I was majoring in political science at City. I had done all my coursework. I had spent 2 years having professors say to me, you're a communist, you're a dupe of the communists. And I kept saying, I'm not a communist, I'm a Trotskyist, and I'm not a dupe. And I hated political science. I really did. So I figured I'd do my thesis a couple of years later. I dropped out, and when I went back to graduate school in the 80s, it wasn't in political science. I had to start all over again. Anyway, I became Dave's manager, and after a while, I started managing other people.
Such as? Such as who?
Okay. One night, David was working at the gas light, and he came home and he said, I just heard this kid. You got to go hear him. He's weird. He's a genius. So the next night, I trotted down to the Cafe Wah, which is one of the coffee houses on McDougal Street. And the Village at that time, by then, people were working. In the 1950s, incidentally, when I met David, there was no work at all for a young folk singer. None. There was no place to work. You hung out in Washington Square. You went to play at somebody's apartment on Spring Street on Sunday nights. You went to the American Youth Hostel, but there was no way to make a living at all. When the clubs started opening, they started opening on McDougal Street, and a strip of clubs developed. I mean, within 2 years, there was a tremendous number of coffee houses and places to play. Most of them did not pay a salary. Most of them, you pass the hat. But the ones that did pay salaries with the Gaslight, which had started as a basket house, but became a paying place, the Bitter End, and Gertie's Folk City, and later the Cafe Ogogo.
And who did you manage besides Dave?
So
Who did you manage besides Dave?
Well, okay, so I went down and I heard this kid, and I thought he was a genius, and I didn't know how, and he became a good friend. And one day, Bob said to me, will you get me gigs? And I said, do you want me to be your manager? And Bob Dylan said, yeah. So I became his manager, and I did that for about 6 months. Later, I managed, but you don't care about that. Later, I managed the Holy Modal Rounders, Paul Jeremiah on and off, Danny Kalb on and off, Maggie and Terry Roach, and a few other people. But initially, it was Dave, and struggle to get Bob gigs. Nobody wanted him. I made a tape of him, and then I had a little seat. I think I had something either made of it, either a little recording or did we have cassettes then? I guess so, yeah. And a cassette, and I took it to Philadelphia, and Manny Roth said to me, "Why should I hire him when I can hire Jack Elliott?" And I took it. Carolyn Hester and Richard Farino were going to Springfield, Massachusetts, so I hitched along with them, and the owner there said to me, "Why should I hire Bob Dylan when I can hire Jack Elliott? Who is this kid?" And I went to Boston, and the Club 47, you could echo it, you know the routine. I heard that everywhere. Finally, I called Cafe Lena, which was the first out-of-town gig for folk singers in New York. And in her first year, whenever Lena needed a performer, she didn't have someone for a weekend, she'd call me, and I would find her someone. So I called her, and I said, "I want you to hire this kid." She said, "No." And for the only time in my whole life, I did the kind of thing Albert Grossman would do. I said, "You owe me, and this is what I want." So they booked him, and he went to work at the Cafe Lena, and he bombed. They hated him. And her husband got up on stage, and he said, "You people are stupid. You're hearing a genius. Someday when you're old, you're going to tell your children, I had a chance to hear this famous guy, and I talked during his whole performance." I don't really know whether they continued to talk during the second set. Bob said they did. They didn't pay much attention to Jake. And later, the Cafe Lena started boasting that they were the first out-of-town place to hire Bob Dylan, which is true. It is true.
Okay, well, we have...
Still pictures in Cafe Lena in their dressing rooms.
Yeah. But they did. And they brought him back.
Okay, so now we have a sense of who this woman is, Terri Thal. She's also an author. She wrote a book called My Greenwich Village, Dave, Bob, and Me. And I've read it, and it's very interesting, and it's going to be for sale in the exhibit hall afterwards. So if you're interested, here it is.
I understand that there will be a table set up for me.
Right.
A special table for Terri.
Sorry. That there'll be a table set up where the vendors are. Yeah, and I'll be there for a while, an hour or two after this.
Okay, and my co-host, I think you know this guy. His name is Ron Olesko.
Thank you. Well, again, it's an honor to be here among all of you, and also to be able to talk to an old friend who I've known longer than either one of us want to admit. But I think most of you know Tom Chapin, and yes. You know, Tom, what I always found very interesting about your life is your family. And growing up, I know you were encouraged because you came from a family of musicians and painters and all kinds of good people.
Well, there was no worry about becoming a lawyer. My dad was a jazz drummer, very famous to a small number of people. Jazz drummers. He wrote a book in 1948 called Advanced Techniques for the Modern Drummer, and it's still one of the Bibles. You talk to any drummer, which I do all the time. I meet somebody and they say, "Do you ever use the Chapin book?" And they go, "The white Chapin book? Oh, I never got that. You connect," you know. And then they talk about knowing Dad. So and his mother was a teacher, and his father was a painter. So one grandfather was a painter, the other grandfather was Kenneth Burke, the author. He was very famous to a lot of folks. He was the editor of the Dial in Greenwich Village and knew everybody. And so my mom was, it was an arts family. And so the thrust was was always to get through school, get education, all that stuff. But without talking about it, the thrust seemed to be, can you find something in the arts that you want to be doing anyway and make a living at it? Which my mother was never sure we could, you know. And so, and for us, Grandma Chapin made sure that we were new music. She wanted her at that point, four boys, James, Harry, Tom, Steve, to know the language of music. And so she put us in Greenwich House Music School, and each of us had to take an instrument. Harry took trumpet, James, the oldest, took piano, and Steve took piano, and I took 5 years of clarinet under duress. And
we just happen to have a clarinet here for. Oh.
Yeah, and then when Harry was 14 and Steve was also my mom and dad divorced very early. My dad was on the road being a drummer and a jazz guy and a womanizer, and had a number of other families as well. So there's 12 kids, all fathered by my prolific father. And but my mom remarried, and my stepfather bought a brownstone in Brooklyn Heights in 1953 for $16,000, and we moved to Brooklyn Heights, and which we ever since call the center of folk music in America, because the Chapin boys grew up there, and we took the A train to West 4th Street whenever we could. But when I was 12 and Harry was 14, Steve was 11, we heard the Weavers at Carnegie Hall, that seminal recording, and it changed our world, as it did America's world in some ways. Suddenly there was the Kingston Trio and Peter, Paul, and Mary, and all these folk groups that were totally inspired by that same record. And Steve and I also, when we got to Brooklyn, became choir boys, so we were good singers. And I'll jump right to the fact. I mean, so we listened to this recording a whole summer, and then that summer Harry said, we could do that. And he got a banjo and I got a guitar, and we became the Chapin Brothers. And for the next 10 years, we terrorized the neighborhood. and copying first the Weavers and then whoever else we could hear. And whenever we had a little bit of money, we'd go to the village and hear somebody and try to steal a song or an idea and so we knew the village very well. We weren't in the village though, you know. We came from a different thing, kind of we weren't the Kingston Trio, didn't want to be that, but we were the Chapin Brothers, and it was much more, it was not hip as far as the village was concerned, you know. And so that was the beginning of us in this, and it was a wonderful way to be, first of all, connected with this incredible musical world that was the village, and meeting all these people, and for me and for Steve especially, we were youngsters, you know, and Harry was the sort of the we could do this. Let's go play somewhere. And we did the Hootenannies, and now the open mic nights, but in those days the Hootenannies at the Bitter End or wherever. And I think we were also the first, quote, electric band to play the Bitter End, because one summer we hired my dad to play drums with us, and we put the Armand pickups on our acoustic guitars.
They
and
didn't keep you off the stage?
No, they actually thought it was pretty cool. And through where was it? It was at the Bitter End, and through that we played the Mike Douglas show, the Chapin. But Dad knew Mike Douglas, so you know, because Mike Douglas was a jazz singer. Anyway,
I think there's a video of the Chapin Brothers. An Oscar Brand show, I think that's floating around on YouTube.
Let's Sing Out. Did you ever do that up in Canada?
No, I did Mike Douglas a bunch of times.
Yeah.
I did Mike Douglas.
Sure.
Not quite did, but you know the meaning of did in this instance, as it were. Yes, but I played the Mike. Thank God, I played the Mike Douglas show a lot of times because I was living in Philadelphia, and he was always very good to me.
Yeah, he was great to us as well. He was very, very nice about it.
I'm amazed that they didn't throw you off stage though, because remember that those were the years, with respect, those were the years of the folk Nazis, and if you had drums on a record, as I did, then you were an anathema. And if you dared to plug anything in, I mean, this is way pre-Dylan at Newport.
Yeah.
If you dared to plug an instrument in, you weren't a real folk singer.
Yeah, we definitely got that, you know.
Unless you were black, then it was okay, yes.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Muddy Waters could do it, for sure.
Well, your career also took a little different turn because you went into cinematography and filmmaking.
This is family again. My uncle, my mother's sister, was married to Richard Leacock of Leacock Pennybaker, the great documentary filmmakers. They did Monterey Pops as music, but they also did a lot of other incredible things. And he, one of the inventors of cinema verite. So when Harry flunked out of school, which he did twice from Cornell, he would always get a job with Uncle Ricky, taking sound or just doing something. And when I graduated school, I was teaching in White Plains to stay out of Vietnam. And Harry got an offer from Jim Lipscomb, another great documentary filmmaker, to do a film about sharks. And Harry didn't want to go. He had 2 girlfriends, and he was doing other stuff, and he didn't want to disappear for 6 months. And I was with Jim Lipscomb used to live up in Tarrytown, and he'd take us up. We'd play tennis, me and Harry and with him and his friends. And we're in I'm on the train going up to Tarrytown from New York, and he's trying to convince Harry to go on this incredible trip to the Indian Ocean and film sharks. And Harry, no. And I'm going, that sounds really cool, you know. So finally, I got the job, and so I was the assistant sound man, and assistant diver of this and that, and I actually sang a bunch of songs because it's a cinema verite. So I had the guitar, and Jim Lipscomb said, "Just sit up there and sing, you know, I'm going where those chilly winds don't blow," and a couple other songs, and it ended up being the soundtrack for the movie. But it was so silly. If you look at the movie, which is great, they filmed The Great White Shark underwater. Peter Gimbel, I was with him for 6 months. And it's the guy who invented the shark cage, right? And I'm 23 years old. It's like magical going through first South Africa, up and down the coast of Africa, Madagascar, Juan de Novo. Then the Ceylon, because there was a sunken British battleship in World War II that was, they dived on. They thought they were sharks. There was no sharks, but we were there. And then, anyway, but if you see the movie, it's all about the sharks. And every once in a while, they cut to me singing some sweet song on the prow of the boat. You know, and it's like, what's he doing here? So they talk about the divers, and there's a Tom Chapin's folk singer. So, but that was a fabulous thing. So that's another side. These are comic strip things that in your life, if you're lucky, you get to do these things. And we came back, and Jim Lipscomb said, "You should stay on this, you know, on this film, because we never saw the great white shark. We saw hundreds of thousands of sharks and filmed them with dead whales and stuff. But when we got back, they were raising another $800,000 to go to Dangerous Reef in Australia and film the real great white shark, because we saw every other shark but the great white. And I came home, and it was August, and I'd been away 6 months, and I wanted to make music. Yeah. And I'd been with these people, the divers, Ron and Valerie Taylor from Australia, Peter Gimbel, who was of the Gimbel family, and Stan Waterman, and these people who were all, I learned from them that you could make a life that you want. Mm. They had made, Peter Gimbel had made a lot of money in Wall Street. He was working on Wall Street, and his twin brother died. And he says, "Is this what I want to do? I don't need to be doing money." So he started trying to do underwater stuff. He filmed the Weddell seal and all this stuff. And spending time with those people, I came back and I said, what do I really want to do? And I didn't really want to be sitting at a machine with the movies and the whole thing. But I did want to make music, so I came home, and that became, but it was a powerful thing at that time to make that decision.
And your music also brought you onto television with Make-A-Wish and that.
I had a kid show, so I'm playing with my brother Steve in a band called the Chapins. We had kicked Harry out of the band at that point, and we were managed by Paul Colby of the Bitter End, and we had only one job outside of the Bitter End the whole year. Basically, we opened with the opening act for every other thing. So you came one week, we would open for David Steinberg, and then 2 weeks later we would open for Elephant or whatever it was, you know. And so and at the end of the year, we went to talk to our lawyer, and he said, well, how do you feel about this? So we decided we wanted to fire Paul and try something else, right? So we're at the lawyer's office, and the lawyer said, well, so what are we going to do? You know, we fire him? How are we going to tell him? And the rest of the band says, I don't want to go tell him. I don't want to go tell him. You go tell him. So I did. I took the subway down from 57th Street, where the lawyer was or something, and went to the bitter end in the afternoon, and there's Paul, and Paul's about this big, and I'm this big, you know, but I'm talking to him, and I say, but I'm a really good manager. I know you are, Paul. We're going to try something different. Thank you so much. And I'm about to leave it. On the way out, he goes, by the way, there's these people who have been bugging us about a folk singer. It's a kid's show. And Doris at the door says, thinks you might be good. You want the number? I said, okay. So I took the number, and I called up. It's called Make-A-Wish. It was a kid's show, but kind of a very erudite, it was a word game. I made a wish a bull to be. Imagine all the possibilities. If you were a bull, you could be a bullfrog. You could be a bulldozer. You could be a bull ring. And in the bull ring, there was, you know, and it's all the quick cuts. And it won an Emmy and a Peabody and ran for 5 years. And suddenly made me a name I could play colleges, you know, as a solo. And so that was Make-A-Wish. And every time I saw Paul Colby after that, he says, hey, Chapin, you owe me a Cadillac. But I didn't make much money from the beat. Harry wrote the songs for Make-A-Wish. And he made more money than I did from the songs than I was. But anyway, it's one of those things where, you know, I had a national presence, and college kids all watched that show. So
it launched you to where you are today.
Where I am today. I'm right here at NERFA.
Right. Oh, I'm glad you're here.
Follow my steps, and you can get it.
Can they get the Cadillac too? Sonny, I think it's time for our next guest.
I was going to say that I bought him the Cadillac, so don't worry.
Well, I'm sitting here next to folk royalty.
Oh, fuck.
I know. You are such a real person. It's a pleasure to know you, I'm telling you. Well, the things that just blow me away, I've watched twice now. There's a documentary about her, about Janis Ian, and I've watched it 2 times, and it's just amazing. You can catch it, and it's called, what's it called?
Breaking Silence.
Breaking
It's
Silence.
on PBS and
It's on PBS.
Amazon and all of that. Thank you.
And I learned so much from that. I mean, the highlights for me that I didn't know before, that at age 17, she played Philharmonic Hall. I mean, come on. How many 17-year-olds can say that? Just one. And here she is. And her song at 17 won a Grammy Award, and it's on a an LP called Between the Lines, which I happen to have.
Also a CD.
Yeah, well, I have both.
And cassette and 8-track.
Anyhow, so you wonder, how did she get to where she is today? And I think I know part of the answer, and this is something that isn't generally known. Janis attended Camp Woodland, and her father was the director.
He was the music director at Woodland, and then when Norman Studer retired and gave up Woodland, my father formed Weebatuck, and he became the director, and Pete Seeger and Bernice Reagan were our music directors.
That's right, and then it became Camp Abelard,
Correct,
where my kids attended. So I have a connection to this.
It's a dismayingly small world, frighteningly so.
Well, describe the camp philosophy. I think that really had a lot to do with who you are.
So my friend Janie calls it the Commie Pinko Red Diaper Camp. And it actually was not a communist camp. It was not socialist. But instead of 4th of July, we had things like Flag Day. And all the different flags of the world would be shown. And each camper would get to be from a particular country and study about that country. It was a very progressive camp without being tied to a particular religion or a particular political stance. So we attracted a lot of amazing musicians. Eric Weisberg was a counselor. Bernice and Pete, of course, Richie Havens would come up on weekends. So that was all influential, but the biggest influence for me was at Woodland when I was 10, and everybody was playing guitar. All the counselors played, all the campers who were older played, and I thought, well, this is pretty cool. My dad played because he was a teacher and he taught music, but that wasn't nearly as interesting as watching somebody try to pick out a Joan Baez song. So I picked up a guitar at Woodland, and then I continued through there. And one of the hallmarks, I think, of folk music is that the players are inevitably generous. I learned how to play guitar from other players. I stole my dad's Lead Belly songbook, and I learned all the chords and the songs, but it was people like Eric Weisberg or Richie who taught me chords. And we had people like Mike Peters, who went on to be a choreographer for Michael Jackson, came up with the glove idea and things like that. It was just a big emphasis on the arts and on the global importance of the arts. It's one of the reasons I ended up going to South Africa during the apartheid ban, because I was really taught that cultural bans don't work, that to bring music or theater or dance to another culture, in my case with a black drummer as it happened, is to go underneath the law and wind up on the other side where the law couldn't touch you, because all you were doing was making music, really. I mean, you really weren't doing anything seditious. You were just making music and singing songs like Society's Child. So, but this is weird for me because, I mean, I've known these people for a really long time. I was the kid, you know, I was always the 10-year-old, then 12-year-old, then 13-year-old playing in the village. And Dave and Terri were two of the first people to think that I had any talent or any future. And Dave invited me to go to dinner at their house. And my mother, who was pretty forerunning, insisted that I take a friend named Johnny Gottlieb with me because she was convinced that it was a den of iniquity and I was going to be spirited away into white slavery or something. So remember, and so we came to the house, and it was all very, with respect, it was all very middle class, very normal looking. You know, Dave was nice and quiet, nowhere near what he was on stage. Terri was very motherly, you know, and they were absolutely sweet. So, and then Tommy and I, you took the best picture of me and Tom Paxton ever, backstage at one of the Pete Seeger shows in Tarrytown. So Tom takes amazing stills. What interested me was hearing about the jazz, because the juxtaposition of jazz, science fiction, and folk music is a real constant. And I hang out with a lot of science fiction writers. I probably correspond with more science fiction authors than I do musicians at this point, because there's such a parallel with folk music. They're both, and jazz, they're all micro-genres. You know, they're popular for a while, and then everybody forgets. Then they come back again, and then everybody forgets. So the great folk scare, as Dave used to say, happened. The great science fiction scare happened. The great jazz scare happened. And then all of a sudden they're off the radar. It's not like pop music, where it's an enduring thing that morphs and morphs and morphs and makes a lot of money. These are all genres that you don't go into if you intend to make a living. These are all genres that you go into out of love. And I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of jazz people read science fiction, listen to folk music. A lot of folk people read science fiction, listen to jazz, because there is a commonality in the three. We are not...
They're all aliens.
They're all aliens. And we've all been abducted at some point into these formats that we never considered before. No, I think that's really interesting, because they're all outlaw genres. They're all the genres of people who want to make a better world, see a different world, but try and see clearly in this world. And I think that's a pretty cool thing to be part of. Yeah. Yeah.
All righty. We're going to, we could spend 2 hours on Society's Child, but
Please, God, no.
I won't. We're going to spend nothing on that because I think that's pretty well known. And my favorite is always at 17. I think if you never wrote another song, that says it all. It's a beautiful song. It's a perfect song. But what I really want to talk to you about, and this is really jumping into much more recent times, is the fact that you came out as bisexual or as a lesbian?
No, I
How
would
did
say
you come
gay.
out? Gay. Okay.
I know, that word lesbian just sounds like a food group. It does. It sounds like a type of hummus. I don't know why gay men got gay and then gay women had to keep lesbian. I don't understand that. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No. But I just wanted to talk about why you came out and why you felt it was important.
So I had always gravitated toward women, although I did marry a man, which confused the situation. But my mother raised me that you sleep with people you love. You marry people you love. She never mentioned gender. So it wasn't part of my brain to worry about it. I was living with a woman in the 70s. The press were pretty good to me. They were quiet about it because in the 70s, I would have lost my cabaret card. I wouldn't have been allowed to play in a lot of venues. I wouldn't have been allowed to do television. There were morals clauses in the contracts for record companies. At 17 would never have been played. So all my friends, my family, the business knew, but by and large, people out there didn't know or weren't supposed to anyway. And then I married a man, a lunatic. Yeah, we all have one. I know. And then after that was over, I just was with a couple of women. And then I met Pat, who I've been with now for 36 years. And I realized that in not being vocal about it, I gave the appearance of doing something wrong. So I decided that I would come out, as it were. This was 1990 or 89, 90. And a couple of people in the gay rights movement heard about it, and a woman named Urvashi Vaid, who has sadly passed on, who was an incredible organizer and fulcrum for the gay rights movement, who was the one who said, look, we got to stop worrying about marriage for this, marriage for this, marriage for this. Let's go with gay marriage, one thing. Get that passed, and the rest will follow. She's a brilliant, brilliant attorney. She sat me down and she said, I know you want to come out now, but why don't you wait till your next album? And I said, I don't want my music to be called gay women's music. I want to stand on its own. I don't want to be a gay songwriter. I want to be a songwriter. And she said, did I know that 3 out of every 10 teenage suicides was because the kid thought they might be gay? Might be, not even gay, might be. And she said, just imagine some gay kid whose parents are about to throw them out of the house, taking at 17 and saying, you know this song? You love this song? This person is gay. And that was a profound thing to say to me because it dovetailed with my feeling of responsibility, because one of the things the Kami Pinko camp gave us was a real sense of responsibility toward the world. We were supposed to go out there and do good in the world, make it a better place. So I agreed to wait until Breaking Silence came out. And as it happened, it came out right around when Clinton was elected. We went to the Triangle Ball, and it was Melissa Etheridge, Katie Lang, and me, all just bang, all at once. And then Greg Louganis came out with another book called Breaking the Silence. And then all of a sudden we were everywhere. It was astonishing how many gay people there were. And a lot of people who had been closeted felt like it was now safer. Every time somebody comes out, whether it's in their family or among their friends or in public, like someone like me, other people take heart, and it undoes a bit of the fear that a Matthew Shepard incident engenders in us. So that was why.
Well, I
Janis,
appreciate that.
What was it on tour in '76? Was my first.
We did a
tour.
bunch of touring together.
Yeah, and I thought that you. My memory was that somewhere in that tour, that the Village
Voice outed me. Yeah.
Outed you
on the back page. Yeah.
So
Bisexual discovered in upstate New York.
Yeah. So it was my first album, and I got this great tour opening for 40 dates across the country, starting with Janis Ian.
We wound up at Carnegie Hall, didn't we?
We ended in the Carnegie Hall.
Yeah.
But the first sound check, I came out and did it, and Janis comes up to me and looks me up and says, "Tom, if anybody fucks with you, you bring them to me, okay? And I said, okay.
But you know, that's the kind of attitude you can only have when other performers, when you were opening act, treated you like crap.
Yeah. No, I totally appreciate it. It was fabulous.
It's a small business.
But okay, I'll do that. Yep. And all the way through was great. And the audiences were wonderful until we got to Carnegie Hall. My first time in Carnegie Hall, and the Village Voice had outed the thing, and all of a sudden, what's this guy doing up with our Janis? In New York. So it was the only place I didn't get a particularly good response.
I don't think. Well, I don't.
I'm telling you from the opening act.
From your perspective, yeah. I'm
So.
sorry. Yeah. Okay.
It's
No,
not
it's not my fault. I don't take any responsibility for those people.
It's just one of those things. I actually wanted to tell you.
You were lucky. When I opened for America, people threw bottles. I mean, I hid behind the drums.
Yeah, I've heard.
It's always a question when somebody's throwing bottles of who gets the bass drum to hide behind. Usually the drummer's already there, and you have to settle for a cymbal.
I have much worse. That's right. Yep.
I think with any splinter group, be it folk people, or gay people, or Armenians, any small group, there's a sense when someone is famous and acknowledges that they are part of that group, there's a sense of intimacy that is really unfounded. I mean, with all respect to everyone here, there's the feeling that because you're gay, I will like you. Or because you're Jewish, we have something in common. Or because you're a folk person, I want to have dinner with you. There's always that. The Olivia Records is my favorite because the Olivia Records holds cruises that were the first gay-themed cruises. And for a lot of women, I get it, for a lot of women who were not able to be themselves in their hometowns or wherever they were living, this was a chance to be normal, to feel normal, to not worry about somebody yelling at you or screaming at you or possibly worse, but to hold hands with your partner. This was a big deal. But I remember when they invited me to do one, and the woman said, it'll just be you and 600 lesbians. And I said without thinking, why would I want to do that when I keep one at home? So much for gay rights, sorry.
Okay. Well, at this point, I think we're going to kind of, you're the best group I've ever had up here because you're already doing the interacting that we're supposed to do.
I think part of it's because we all know each other.
I think that's wonderful. I really do. And so, first of all, I want to ask the performers, and maybe even you could talk for Dave on this one. I always ask people to talk about standout concerts that they've had, either because they were a total disaster or they were really so successful that you went home like feeling like the queen or a king or whatever. So if you want to, we'll start with, if you can think of any of Dave's concerts that were really special, either terrible or...
He never bombed.
Okay,
occasionally later, in coffee houses, occasionally when he was drinking too much, there were problems, but he never bombed. The one that I remember, the two that I remember actually were his first town hall concert, because that was a big deal then. Town hall in New York was not Carnegie Hall, but for a folk singer, it was a very prestigious thing. And I never applauded for Dave. Never. I just didn't do that after we were together. I felt silly doing it, but I remember doing it that night. It was, yeah, that was good. And so, just one comment. David and I broke up. I am totally comfortable doing this kind of thing, writing about him, because we broke up as very good friends. We weren't angry with each other. We didn't fight. We were turning each other into nervous wrecks, and we tried very hard for a very long time, doing very stupid things, trying to not do it, and we finally gave up and separated. But we stayed very good friends for the rest of his life, and he was friendly with the men I lived afterward. I am friendly with his widow, so it's I feel okay about it. The other thing that I remember actually was the year of the great. This is more me than him actually, but the year of the great jug band, which was jug bands, which was either I forget either 63 or 64. And Jim Queskin had started a jug band in Boston. David followed up with a jug band in New York. It was very jazz-oriented, actually. I mean, the jug band, more than almost anything else, if you listen to it, you hear Jelly Roll Morton. Dave was a jazz musician, a traditional jazz musician when he was very young, before he got to folk, and it permeates his music totally. It's one of the things that made his music distinctive. But anyway, so there was this jug band with Sam Charters and Danny Kalb, two other people, and it played in, he did Newport. And before that, however, I got a call one night from somebody who said, I just lost his name. Okay. Nouns slip every now and then. I identify with that. And I said, and I'm Jesus Christ or something like that, and I hung up on him. Max Gordon. Max Gordon owned the Village Vanguard. And the phone rings again. This guy says, I'm Max Gordon. And I said, I'm Madame Curie or something. I started to hang up. He said, don't hang up. So I didn't hang up, and he was inviting the jug band to play in the Village Vanguard. Well, the Vanguard's a jazz club. It's not a folk club, or certainly wasn't then. I don't think they had ever booked folk music. But we were jazz fans, and so was Sam, and so was Danny, and so were Barry Kornfeld, and Artie Rose, and it was very exciting. So he booked them into the Vanguard, and when we got there, and Danny had to join the union, and they had to get cabaret cards, stuff like that. And when we got there, you would appreciate this at least. Dave Van Ronk and the Ragtime Jug Stompers were billed above Clark Terry. They had top billing, and Clark Terry had second billing, and we were mortified. We were so embarrassed. I mean, here are these great jazz musicians, and here are these guys who are good. They're professional. They're really all very good. But we felt it was hardly the same league, and the audience felt the same thing because they bombed. Talk about bombing. Nobody from the folk music world came. He didn't advertise to the folk music world. The people who went to his club were jazz people. They didn't give a damn about the Ragtime Jug Stompers, as good as they were for a jug band. And
hard.
He got rid of after it was a 2-week gig or a 3-week gig, I forget. He got rid of them after a week.
But that's interesting because Max was the one who donated one night a month to Broadside Magazine to come into the Village Vanguard and do hootenannies, and that's where I met Paxton, and I met Phil Ochs, and I met Buffy St. Marie, and that's where I played my first real gig, was at that. And it was called the Broadside Hoots, and so he embraced folk music, he just didn't know what to do with it. Yeah, it's interesting.
That's interesting, yeah. This
Is that for me?
Yes, it is.
Excellent.
Max is calling.
I knew they'd find me.
He wants to book you and me in a
Okay, so.
Hi, Max.
Come on, worst gig ever. Huh? Worst gig ever, war story.
Opening for Charlie Daniels Band.
Oh no!
I got a call at 10 o'clock in the morning from ICM or whoever it was and said, Charlie Daniels is playing in sometime down near in Virginia, and the opening act can't get there. Can you come? Can you fly in? We'll pay you, I think, $1,500 in airfare. I said, okay. Get down there and do a sound check and stuff, and so 10,000 people, you know, and ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the evening of Charlie Daniels Band. Now, please welcome Charlie Daniels. Special guest on Chapin. You know, Charlie Daniels. Special guest on Chapin. They didn't even hear what they expected. Charlie, and I walk out. He goes, so I get out and I start the first song, and halfway through, there's about 15 guys over here going, yeah! I finally stop and say, you know, you guys are the worst fucking audience I've ever been in front of. And they all go, yeah! And I said, but let me just tell you, I'm getting paid tonight, and Charlie's not even here yet. So you can sit here and scream at each other, or you can sit there and listen to what I'm going to say, because I'm going to do it whether you listen or not, because I'm a professional. So get used to it, sit your ass down, and I'm going to sing about 10 songs, and then I'll be out of here, and you can get Charlie. He's not coming until the lights go, you know, till the sun goes down. That was the worst. I come off the stage, and the band goes, sorry, man. I said, that was when, you know, I wish I had a power trio. He says, no, we have a power trio every night. They don't work either.
So that's what musicians do when we're backstage together. Normally, sooner or later, we're telling war stories. We're talking to each other about, yeah, I played for that guy, he stiffed me too. Or, yeah, the audiences at that venue just suck, you know, they're horrible. When I was out as an opening act, and that's where I learned to be a proper lead act, I got bottles thrown at me from the America audience, because they're there to see a band. They're there to see America. They don't want to see some 4'10" girl get up with a guitar singing sad songs. That is sort of the last thing on their minds. So I have two, I've had a lot of gigs that I hated, but for various reasons, none of which are germane. So coming from being an opening act to suddenly being the lead act, and you're watching your record climb up the charts, and people are saying, wow, you know, you're going to make it now, and you're starting to get these bookings. You've gone from being the lead act in a 300-seat club to an 800-seater to a 1,200-seater, and suddenly you're playing 2,500-seaters. But before that, you're playing a lot of opening for, I've opened for everybody. I mean, if you name a folkie older than me, I have opened for them. And I opened for Loggins and Messina. Well, two things. I opened for Seals and Crofts. And Dan Seals sent their tour manager to my trailer, because by then I had my own trailer. And yeah, I know, and that means you get a bathroom, which is like amazing. And they asked me to come to their dressing room, so I went. And they asked me, was everything okay? Did I need anything? And they told me if anybody gave me any kind of problem, to let one of them know. And I remember going back to my trailer and thinking, when I'm a lead act, that's how I'm going to be. So that was a great lesson. Then I opened for Loggins and Messina, and me and my band had been on the road for months. When you're the opener, you get sandwiches if you're lucky. And usually they're not very nice sandwiches. Maybe you get some old fruit. You get whatever. The catering people went, okay, the lead act is going to notice, let's give it to the opener. So we walked in, and there were like 15 barbecues set up, 15 grills, and you could smell the steak cooking. I mean, it was torturous, and we thought, oh man, we're playing a sold-out gig in Asbury Park. It's like 8,000 people, we're gonna get steak. And we hit our dressing room, and there's sandwiches. So we go, and we, you know, okay, sandwiches, whatever. And I hear a commotion down the hall, so I walk down the hall and put my ear to the door, and it's Jimmy Messina screaming at the promoter. And he's yelling at the promoter, I don't give a shit. Everybody eats the same. And the promoter is saying, I only have enough steaks for my family and you guys. And Jimmy's saying, then your family needs to go out to dinner because the opener is eating steak. I never forgot that. I mean, he never said anything, but to me, that was the way that the lead act should behave. You should take care of the opening act. First of all, because openers become closers. It's a very small business. Second of all, because then you're being a mensch. You're being an adult. You're being a good person. The story you were asking about, Deborah, my tour manager, and I were playing at a club that I loved in Phoenix, basically a motorcycle club. But I would draw my own crowd, and it was what we call a hot and sweaty gig. They would have to clear out the janitor's closet for me to have a place to change. But they were really nice people. We got a good crowd, loved the stage. So I'm on stage, and I'm singing some song. And there's 2 empty seats in front of me. First row, sold-out house. A couple of people come down the aisle, and they sit down in the seats, and I'm thinking, okay, they're late, traffic or whatever. About 2 minutes later, as I'm singing, a pizza delivery guy comes down, and he carries the pizza down the aisle like this, and he walks up to these people, and he puts it on the stage, and they pay him, they tip him, he leaves, and I'm singing Jessie, which is like an interminably long ballad that goes on forever and is very, very sad. I'm singing Jessie, and I'm watching these people open the pizza box. It's right in front of me. I mean, it's not even as far as those monitors. They open the pizza box. They eat the pizza. I go on to my next song because what do you say? I try to ignore them, go on to my next song. They finish their pizza. They close the box. And they get up and leave. I mean, not just eating pizza during the show, but then they leave before the show is over. So flash forward to about 10 years later, I'm on my Facebook page, which has about 600,000 people. So I tell this story as part of a War Stories that I was inviting other performers to contribute to. And about 2 days later, I get an email saying, please, God, read this. And I read, and it's the woman from that night. And she says,
It was his
my
fault.
boyfriend and I were there. My boyfriend ordered the pizza. I had nothing to do with it. I was mortified, and I just want to apologize. So that was probably the most bizarre for me.
I got one more bizarre one.
Go.
Opening for, who's the guy? Gallagher, the comedian, with the watermelons. And it's a college. And so I do my sound check and stuff. And just before I go on, Gallagher comes over and says, this is my alma mater. Please don't be too good. Now, wait a minute, I forgot to tell you, this is a week after Harry died. It's the first concert I'm doing after Brother Harry died. So, and I know what Harry would have said, you know, but I couldn't, I started laughing. Oh, okay. So I go out, do a show, and toward the end, the last song I sing is Cats in the Cradle. And I start and the audience is going like this, you know. And then in my ear, I hear Harry say, "Fuck you, Gallagher." He would have, and probably did.
What was the best show?
Huh?
What was the best show?
The best show? You know, we've all have just magical shows, and when it happens, it's wonderful and kind of a relief, and you sleep, the good sleep and stuff. But I can't say that was the best thing ever. One of my favorites, of course, was at Carnegie Hall when the Harry Memorial. That was with a whole bunch of people singing Harry songs. Bruce Springsteen and Pete Seeger, and I mean, where do you get all these people? And Judy Collins doing Cats in the Cradle, and just the whole that's actually, you can see that show. My favorite was that Richie Havens did WOLD. Can I tell a quick story about? So Steve, my brother Steve, puts together a full orchestra, big kind of orchestra thing for everything, and all the arrangements. And he had this great arrangement for OLD. Dun, 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 I am the morning DJ at W, with the horns and the whole thing, a big. And so Richie comes at the SIR studios where we're rehearsing with the orchestra, and he stands there quietly like Richie does, and Steve says, let's do WLD. You want to sing it, Richie? No. So I'm singing it, or Stevie's singing it, just to show the arrangement. And the voice goes, blah, blah, blah. And Richie goes, Tom, come here. And he takes me into the stairwell and says, I don't hear it that way. I hear it like this. And he does. Hello, honey. The voice of God, that. What is it when you heard me back on the radio? And it's like it's Richie Havens doing the best. And so I said, hold on a second. Walk in, Steve, come here. So Steve comes over. We take him back to the I said, Richie, just do it again. Steve here. Listen to it. He goes, Richie, that's great. Why didn't you tell me this yesterday when I didn't? So I didn't spend all night putting the arrangement together. And Richie, he couldn't quite get the part. I've been making extra money doing high. There was the release of this, and so he wanted me to play with him, So he said, "Why don't you guys do the release?" So on the thing, it's my favorite thing. Richie Havens is doing the thing, and I'm just tinkling a little bit like a guitar player, and then Steve and I, sounding like the Pillsbury White Boys, I've been making extra money doing high school sock hops. I'm a big time guest MC. And then Richie goes back. Hello.
That's the thing. I don't know about you. I don't remember shows that were great or got a great reception, because there's always a difference between a show that gets a great reception and a show that you think was great. There's two different things. But I remember people I worked with that I loved working with. I mean, I did probably 50, 60 dates with Richie. And I loved working with him, first of all, because we would always have to hide from his girlfriend, Leslie, because he wanted to smoke a cigarette. And so we would illicitly go off. But I'd known him since I was 13 in the Village. And there wasn't a night that he got on stage when it wasn't magical. It was like Nina Simone. Even in 10 seconds, and sometimes her shows were 10 seconds. Even in 10 seconds, she was magic. There are some performers, and I'm not one of them, who take the stage, own it, and they don't release you until they're done. And Richie was like that. If there's people that I miss in my life, Richie is way at the top of the list. Yeah, great moments for people like us who get to work with them. So that was depressing. Thank you.
Well, speaking of depressing, Hollywood has depicted the Village days in several movies, and you were all there from the 50s, the 80s, and beyond. Look at a film like A Complete Unknown about Dylan, or Llewellyn Davis, which was based on Dave's
give me
book.
a break. That film.
Yeah, and then A Mighty Wind even. And so much more. And Janis, you were in Saturday Night Live, which is not exactly a folk film, but they depicted you in that. How do you feel? Because obviously younger generations are going to see these films in the future.
So I'm amazed when I see a film about the Village in the 50s and 60s and there are no black-white couples. If I have an argument with the one that picked Paxton as its whatever, that was Llewellyn Davis, right? There's no black-white couples. When I was 9 years old and we went to the Village, that was the first thing that struck me, was that there were interracial couples, there were gay couples, there were all these different colors. And that film has no different colors. That blew me away. That was don't start me.
I have a thing about it, obviously. I hate that movie. I have written about that movie.
Llewellyn Davis.
That movie was the Llewyn Davis movie. The Llewyn Davis movie was roughly based on a piece of Dave's life, Actually, before I met him, when he was a merchant seaman in the beginning, and which was, well, when I met him, he was 21, so that was like back when he was 18, 18,
Was it
19, something
combination
like
of
that.
Dave and Tom Paxton, wasn't it?
No.
Supposed to
No.
be, no?
No, Tom walks in to one scene much later.
Okay.
No, it was basically Dave. But what they did was they turned my very smart, very nice ex-husband, former husband, into a schmuck. David and a prick. Dave was not a schmuck and he wasn't a prick.
Yep.
They turned everybody into schmucks. They took that folk music world, and that folk music world, I am old, and I've been around for a long time, and I've been on a lot of scenes, and I can't think of one that was as supportive, friendly, amenable. I mean, what Janis says about, about teaching people, whatever. People taught each other songs. They taught each other arrangements. They turned each other on to gigs. They supported one another. People slept on other people's couches. It was a wonderful, enchanted scene. It was friendly. They made it a competitive, ugly kind of thing. There is a scene, and they just made it ugly. I mean, there is a scene, and it was just nasty. There is a scene in there in which a woman is playing a woman performer is playing the dulcimer. She's heavy. She's playing in what was supposed to be the gaslight. Didn't quite look like the gaslight. It was supposed to be the gaslight.
Wasn't as dirty.
And nothing could have, the bitter, hey, have you been in the bitter end? lately?
No, don't get me started on the bitter
I mean, the bathrooms, it's not that they're not washed, it's just the water is coming up through the floor. So anyway, somebody walks up to the club owner and says, did she fuck you for a gig? And the club owner says, yes, of course. The only woman folk singer, musician, who played dulcimer back in the late 50s
Gene?
was Jean Ritchie.
Yeah.
That was a foul thing to do to a perfectly nice lady, a ladylike lady, and a wonderful musician, and I hated it. Let me just.
I'm not going to argue with you about that.
The second thing, the other thing that I hated about that movie, aside from the fact that it made everybody mean and stupid, was there is a scene in which the Llewyn Davis character knocks up some chick, and she tells him he's pregnant. He says he'll do something, and this guy, and this is supposed to be in 1956, 1955, this guy goes waltzing into the office of a gynecologist, corner office, lots of windows, says, I did it again. And the guy, who obviously does abortion, says to him, oh, well, that's okay. You have credit with us from the last one. Blah. And that's that. Everything's okay. Hey, I got to tell you, in 1955, abortion was illegal. And David, who was supposed the Llewyn Davis character, I mean, maybe that was not supposed to be Dave who did that. Dave once impregnated, before I knew him, he impregnated a young lady. She rode a bicycle down 5 flights of stairs in a loft building trying to abort. I don't even know if she was really pregnant. She may not have been, but she thought she was, and she couldn't tell her parents, and that's what she did. And we had an abortion fund. We kept a couple $100 in the dirty laundry basket.
Right.
So if anybody needed an abortion, I never had that problem, but if anybody needed an abortion, they could have it. I wrote about it on Facebook once about
Forgot
5
about
years
those.
ago.
Everybody had an abortion fund.
And 3 people got in touch with me and said, I used your fund. I mean, I remember one, but, who remembers? Anyway, that is the Llewyn Davis movie, and it was
Okay, well, what about A Complete Unknown?
I haven't seen it.
I saw it.
And a quick review.
A quick review. I think fundamentally, I think it's good. I think Timothy, what's his name, is good. I think the music, Chalamet. I think the music is good. I think they got the arc of a young person coming to New York, and for a reason, and finding that his reason changed, and that his interest changed, and that his want changed. It changed both musically, and it changed in terms of what he wanted for himself, which was fame, and how difficult it was, because he had carved out a niche, to leave that niche and move on. That I think they did. That I think they did well. That being said, obviously I got gripes with it because these are all my friends. I mean, the producers chose not. I'm sorry. Thank you. Not to show anybody from Bob's early life in the Village. Nobody except Pete. And Pete liked him and Pete admired him, but that was, I mean, it's a biopic. They would never on stage together. Pete never introduced him. I mean, it just all that stuff didn't happen. And Pete, incidentally, was not as much as a prig of a lot of you knew him. Wasn't a prig, as much of a prig as they made him out to be in the movie. The other things I hate about it, Susie Rodolo, who was became a very good friend of mine, was a smart, intelligent woman with a lot of courage. She had her own career. Being with Bob was very difficult for a whole lot of reasons. And they turned her into a wimp. Every time you look at her in the movie, she's sitting there crying, saying, I don't know who you are, you keep secrets. Well, by the time Susie and Bob were living together, everybody knew all that stuff. Everybody knew he was Jewish from Hibbing, Minnesota, had never really traveled with a carnival. The guy came to New York and reinvented himself, and we knew it.
Good for him.
So I don't think you're going to give it a 10 on Rotten Tomatoes. It's going to be way down there in the review. We're going to be running out of time soon. I think we have some audience questions. Is that?
I don't know if we have time for that, but remember, the name of this panel is The Wisdom of the Elders. And from each of you, we'd like to hear some wisdom. So, so if you need help with that.
I need help.
Okay, the help is this. You're talking, ignore all the gray hair out there. You're talking to young people. What would you tell them if they're thinking about a career in folk music? Let's start down with Tom and work our way up this way.
Someone once told me, what's your advice? He says, don't leave your wallet in the dressing room. This is it's like any art, it's a part business and part art. What's strange about this is that as a folk singer, you have to be a little bit of a business person yourself, and that's always been my worst part of what I do. But you got to love the travel. I mean, not just the travel, the trip that you take, which is you got to love writing. You got to love putting yourself out there. It takes a huge amount of just balls to get up there and sing your song. One of the great things that I did was I was touring with Harry. I'd started writing already, but I was touring with Harry after he did the Broadway show. And after about 4 months, I realized this was being little Tommy in Harry's shadow was not. I was going to get nuts, So I told Harry that, and I left. And it was really the best thing I did. And the other great thing was to realize that I could write, but when I started doing kids stuff, I reached out to John Forster's right here, and sat with a and sat with somebody I knew was a great writer, and he said, and we invented something together, and realizing that was it took some balls for me to do that, you know, and he was so gracious, and since then I've written with a whole bunch of people, and that has really informed and helped me in terms of that. So I would suggest those kinds of things, which is make sure you absolutely love the process, and not that you're going to become famous and make a lot of money. If you're lucky, you can become a Janis Ian, but if you're not, you can become a me, and which is I'm very lucky. I'm maybe kidding, and it's been a wonderful life, and I enjoy it. But there's a lot of it which is not what you expect, and I still love the performance. I love the writing. I love what I do, and I feel just blessed.
Terry?
Do you want me to talk from the folk singer point of view or the management point of view? Whichever it is, follow your passion. I mean, my thing is follow your passion. I did not plan to become a manager, but a lot of people didn't plan to become anything. When I did it, in a way, I was lucky. I worked with people who I thought were wonderful. I thought their music was great. I could not have been Albert Grossman to save my life, the guy who managed Bob, who Bob left before. And I loved it. I loved the music. I loved what I was doing. I loved helping people hear great music. And I loved working with people who were seeking to make great music. They didn't always do it, but that's what they were trying to do. And that goes over to the musician, singer-songwriter point of view thing, is if you follow your passion, you, from my perspective, I keep thinking of Tom Paxton when I think of singer-songwriters, because when Tom came to New York, nobody knew about singers. There weren't any singer-songwriters. Woody had been one, but nobody thought about them. Everybody was doing songs from the Harry Smith anthology, because most people didn't go down south or go up north or find the thing. That's where they got the songs from. Tom wrote his own songs, and we didn't think of him as distinctive and different because they sounded like they had always been around. And, that's my view of it. The other thing of it is, if you are a musician, learn something about the business. I'm really pleased that there are a lot of workshops here on that, because if you don't know it, you're not gonna get ahead. And this is the hardest, most difficult time I can think of since before the 60s to try and make it as a musician.
Okay, Janis?
I'm going to quote a couple of people who are wiser than me. My acting teacher, Stella Adler, who was 83 when I met her, I was 33, said to me over and over again, and to our classes, trust your talent. Your talent knows better than you do. And I think that's something that's really a necessity for anybody in life, but particularly for an artist, because the world conspires against talent. Talent is very seductive, but it's also very frightening. So trust your talent. When that little bell goes off, listen to it. Odetta said to me when I was 15, never forget that they work for you. You do not work for them. Now that's a major thing if you're going to be an artist of any sort, because it's very difficult as an artist to say no. You're trained to say yes. You're trained to be compliant. You're trained to think that there are 10,000 people waiting to take your job, and that may be true. But the flip side of it is that anybody who's making money off you, once you're gone, is not making money. And that's a hard lesson to learn as an artist. It took me till my 60s to really understand that. And then the only other thing is, from my own point of view, yes, learn a lot about the business. My autobiography is a cautionary tale. If you read my book, that says, don't do this and don't do this because you will end up here. But outside of that, nobody has your vision. Nobody in the whole world has the same vision that you have. So if you're going to be an artist, be true to your vision, because it belongs only to you. And that's the fun of it. That's the cool of it. That's the heartbreak and the wonder of it. Just enjoy your vision. That's what I would say.
Well said. Well, we're just about out of time, but you know what? Tom is going to do a quick song for us. So, and then after that, we're going to take a little break, and then we're going to do the April Fools, and we've got a surprise during that too. So, hope you'll all stick around.
It's a tall one, isn't it?
So I'm going to do a song that is a little trip that you can take down memory lane with me. John Forster and I just wrote this. We were both choir boys, and we're talking about hymns. What is a hymn these days? There are songs that come and go. There are songs I barely know. But the songs I know and love feel like hymns. A Motown hit, a sing-along, a lullaby, a Beatles song. This is the hymn book in my head. I pick a hymn, shadoo run run, and when I'm scared to carry on, I belt it out to drive away the dread. These are my hymns, fa la 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 la, hymns, sha na 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 na. I sing 'em when I'm happy, sing 'em when I'm blue, relaxing in my living room or staring down the face of doom. Wop bop loo bop lop bam boom. These are my hymns. Silent night, stormy weather in my life come together. I know I'm of a certain age, and though your book may not have this page, these are the hymns I carry in my heart. Summertime, my funny Valentine, I'll sing lead and we won't need a chart to sing these hymns. Fa la 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 la, hymns, sha na 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 na. I sing 'em when I'm happy, sing 'em when I'm blue, messing round my living room or staring down the face of doom. Cats in the cradle and the silver spoon. These are my hymns. Na 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 na. La la la. La 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 la, E-I-E-I-O. Hallelujah, fa la la la. Hallelujah, sha na 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 na. We sing 'em when we celebrate, sing 'em when we grieve. Song so right that rings so true, it touched the deepest part of you. Na 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 na. Hey Jude, this land is your land, like a rolling stone. Where have all the flowers gone? Deep in my heart, I do believe. Wop bop a loo bop lop bam boom. These are my hymns. These are my hymns. Amen.
Thank you, Tom Chapin. And thank you, Terri Thal. And thank you, Janis Ian. And my co-host and good buddy, Ron Olesko. If you have not listened to Folk Music Notebook yet, you better do it. Folkmusicnotebook.com. It's free. It's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. God bless Ron Olesko.
Hey, thank you.
And thank you all for being here.
Your checks in the mail, Sonny. Thank you for that. We've got to clear the stage because we've got another group coming on, and our amazing stage crew has to clear everything off. So give us a second to get off stage.